scale has definitely changed since I started. But even then, it was pretty epic.
New friendships develop, new alliances are formed.
It starts with the writing, and Dan and David are there with every single detail.
We start with a very specific idea of how we want those big moments at the end to feel, and this one was definitely no exception.
This was one we entered into with a bit of trepidation, also a lot of excitement because there were scenes we'd been anticipating for so long.
The bottom line is all about these characters' emotional journeys and understanding what they're going through. Without that, it's just pretty pictures.
This season is very much about characters stripping away who they once were and becoming something different.
Your Grace?
Speak up. Can't be worse than mutiny.
After the death of Shireen, I imagine that there's only one way for Celise to go. The guilt and the sort of cumulative effect of the life that she's been leading becomes unbearable.
We've had so much trouble. We've no food, horses, sellswords, some of them have left. Our resources are dwindling. Winter is coming. This is beginning to look like a suicide mission.
As soon as he finds out half his army has fled and his wife has killed herself and Melisandre has left the building, he knows that it was all for nothing. And at that point, he's playing a chess game, and he's a good enough chess player to know that checkmate's coming in 4 moves.
Talking about a particular kind of mindset that's fatalistic. I think the odds are so high and the cost so great that it's not just a selfish thing, it's a dutiful thing, that he has an obligation to behave in a certain way in order to get the throne, and everything must be surrendered to that end.
On to Winterfell.
David Nutter was directing, and he had a certain number of extras and, of course, our hero actors, and they performed in front of a big green screen. We needed to provide the big landscape around Winterfell. We had to provide Winterfell. We had to provide the huge army all on horses. We researched medieval fighting techniques, so we know how they organize themselves, where the army just folds around the enemy, and you know, some may escape, but most of them have no hope. We cover it from the ground, we cover it from Sansa's point of view, and we also do a flyover so that you really understand the geography of what's happening. And then we see the last aftermath when almost no one is left alive and Stannis is ultimately killed by Brienne.
I'm Brienne of Tarth. I was Kingsguard to Renly Baratheon.
The glorious thing about Brienne's last scene of the season is that what she puts at stake, unwittingly, the rescue of Sansa, is only matched by the anti-climax of killing this man.
She was expecting this monster, and what she finds is Stannis. And we had written a longer moment here where Stannis has more last words, and finally we decided that didn't feel like Stannis.
Do you have any last words?
Go on, do your duty.
I think by the end, he thought that some divine authority wanted him on that throne. And then when he realizes that he was wrong and that it was all for nothing, I think Brienne showing up to kill him was almost like a welcome relief.
For me, coming back and seeing them rebuild Winterfell is kind of amazing. My first day on set was shooting the King's Arrival in Season 1 when everyone comes in through the gates. So it was quite exciting. I do feel a bit like I'm home.
It's a much grimmer, darker place. The Starks rule, while not democratic, could be considered, I suppose, benevolent, and Roose Bolton is anything but. So it's become kind of a castle of horrors.
It's always pretty jaw-dropping when you arrive on set. You're kind of on one section, and you're kind of walking on the battlements, and then suddenly you kind of go through an archway, and then it just continues on. It's a 360 full castle, and you don't have to imagine anything. It's all there for you.
Winterfell having been burnt at the end of Season 2, you take a leap of faith that you believe that the Boltons who end up at Winterfell wanted to be comfortable, want to be able to defend it, so there's certain things that you do recognize.
Rebuilding Winterfell is actually incredibly exciting. There's a lot of scenes that take place on the battlements, so that was one of the things that was very key, was designing the battlements such that they accommodated the action. But also what we were able to do is give the whole place the feeling of being much, much bigger. One of the things that we were very interested in is actually showing the building process, so an audience will be able to understand that there are new timbers creating new walkways.
I think the construction really was the biggest challenge because of the materials being extremely heavy, the limit in time and in construction crew as well. It's a proper architectural challenge. Detail plans, doors, windows can always follow. We could only build to a certain height. The rest will have to be topped up and post.
So we had to figure out which walls or which structures they were building, where they existed in the castle, so that when we got high and wide, everything we had seen from the ground made sense. And also we had to understand, for continuity, if we're looking one direction versus another, what part of the castle are we seeing beyond the set?
For Sansa coming back home, you'd think it'd be a pleasant experience, but as soon as she rides through those gates, it's as if someone has just mutilated her whole childhood.
There's just no hope. Every time there's a glimmer of hope for her, it's gone. It just gets taken away, and you kind of feel that Littlefinger's a bit of an arsehole for taking her there.
My lady, I've come to escort you back to your chamber.
Go with her.
Miranda is deeply in love with Ramsay. Sansa is just standing there and she's just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna die, and then suddenly it switches.
We'll step through the fight and then work out what the journeys of the characters are. Then we'll start just playing with ideas. Special effects, art department, stunts, they all have to work together to create the effect. Alfie Allen will flip the double off of the balustrade. She'll fall really messily into a soft box rig. We will then remove the box rig, put her on a wire, puppeteer her into exactly that position, then drop her through her final image onto a 1-inch mat with some energy, and then VFX will stitch that together so it will look like we will see her go over and go boom, hit the ground.
The original sin in Theon's life was turning on the Starks and betraying them. And now finally, after all this time, comes a chance for a little bit of redemption.
I think the struggle for Theon in Season 5 is the struggle for Theon's soul. They're great scenes for Alfie to play, and again, I think, as always, he just plays that ambiguity and that inner sense of torture and conflict absolutely brilliantly with virtually no dialogue.
The purpose of having Theon in the scene at all is that Sansa and Theon end up being sort of shared victims of this monster, to bring them together by the end of it to that moment in the finale where they take each other's hands and jump for their lives. We thought it would be a very powerful story and a powerful arc.
A girl has taken a life. The wrong life. The whole Jaqen character is really cool in that he is so contradictory. I mean, when do you get to play a killer that comes across as a nice guy? You never really know what he's up to, but of course you know he's trying to help Arya on her journey.
The training regime at the House in Black and White is essentially to completely strip away one's ego, one's sense of identity. You actually have to become no one so you can become anyone again. She fails at her first attempt to do that.
Oysters, clams, and cockles! She's sent on a mission to kill a thin man, and on the way, with her vial of poison, she gets distracted by some Lannister flags, which is a really interesting moment because up until this point, she's really starting to get the hang of this becoming someone else, becoming no one. And then as soon as she sees those Lannister, she's not even thinking about Jaqen or the waif. She's completely back to Arya again, and everything is about Sir Meryn Trant.
This season, I think we get to see Meryn in all of his horror. For the scene where Maisie and I have our confrontation, we've done a fair bit of preparation in terms of the physicality of the scene, and I think the emotion will take care of itself.
She violated the terms of the Faceless Man. The terms of the agreement are you don't take a face from the Hall of Faces until you're ready, and she did. Most importantly, she did it for personal reasons, for Arya's reasons, and she pays for it.
What's happening? What's happening?
The House Black and White consists of many different rooms, halls. One of the bigger ones is the atrium. That's where a big fountain stands. That's where they receive the drink of death. You have the Hall of Faces, which is actually really amazing. It looks a bit eerie.
The Hall of Faces was the most exciting part of Season 5 from a design perspective. The thing that really interested me about it was the idea that these faces are somehow stored, but also part of the architecture. Through creating a space where we have columns of faces and walls of faces, it meant we were able to create a room with depth. So within this space, what Greg Middleton did, who was the first cinematographer to shoot it, he shot it in very cool light so that the warmth of the faces, the skin of the faces, showed through beautifully. And so it has a wonderful kind of mystery to it.
We've built approximately 600 faces in total, and we've built approximately 550 vac-form plastic faces, which are basically scattered around the atrium. And they consist of, I think we've got 31 or 32 different faces, which are cast from different extras, different people on the crew. And we've tried to have a mix of as many different sort of races and ages, face shapes and sizes as possible.
It's fun to walk around it. Dan and I have our faces up there in different colors and forms and everything, so you kind of walk around looking for your own face, which is pretty creepy, actually.
One thing about people in the design department is we love to build things. We like a challenge. And House of Black and White gave us that. Through concept artists, through sketch work, we realized the least we could build. It was a collaboration between design and visual effects just to work out where our bit ends and their bit takes over.
The exterior sets were shot in Croatia, and our team did a beautiful, beautiful job of building out the rest of the structure in CG that extends the structure to its full, super creepy, gory height.
There's a lot of terrifying scenes this year involving Arya. The changing faces is one that we tested early on. It's an idea more than it is something that you can see, but we knew that in the blocking, Jaqen, who was wearing a hooded robe, lands on the ground and Arya thinks he's dead. So we had to get all of the people who are representing all of the faces into that hooded robe without the robe moving.
We watched how the hood fell when someone fell onto the floor, and then we made it like that. We stiffened it and fixed it to the step. And then we've made a small track that the person lies on, and then we just track them into the exact position so we can line up their eyes on a monitor.
So the trick was causing the face to become translucent as she pulled it off, and the act of pulling it off would reveal the next face. And we had the person move just a little bit, so it felt like there was a little bit of resistance taking each face off. And the face seems to dissolve even as she's pulling it off. There's a lot of very, very tricky stuff, but I think it's a really effective moment.
What I'm trying and failing
I know
to say.
what you're trying to say.
No, I'm afraid you don't.
I do. I'm glad that you're my father.
Well, it's unfair, isn't it? I mean, he's finally revealing to his daughter this big secret, and then she says that she knows. For the first time, Jamie, he's able to openly be father to his child and experience that's a very nice feeling.
Listen.
I was reading the script and I was like, no, this is too happy, she's gonna go. And I started crying. Not because I died, but because it's so sad. Because she's finally found her dad and he's finally found her.
The thing I love about this scene is that it could end 30 seconds before it does, and it would be a really heartwarming scene because for the first time, he's being embraced by his child with the child knowing that she is his child.
When he started out doing this, it wasn't really about a sense of duty to his children. It was just about how to get himself back in the good graces of the woman that he loves. And over the course of the season, it becomes about being a father, probably to his great surprise.
Forgive me, child. I wish you all the happiness in the world.
Unfortunately, Marcella is a casualty of war. My ends are greater.